Hello, this is Fear Dragon coming at you with another StarCraft 2 netcast. Today we have game number 2 between Grubby and StardustLight. If you have not seen game number 1, please go ahead and click on the annotation below and it'll take you to that video. But if you're still around, I'm going to assume you have, we're going to go ahead and jump into it. This is once again from IEM Singapore, round of 16. And yeah, let's do this and introduce these players. Spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of Ohana, we have the blue Protoss player. Representing Team Light is going to be StardustLight, and he is the Korean Protoss player, down currently 1 game against his opponent. Spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner of Ohana as the red Protoss player, he's going to be representing no team other than his own, is going to be Grubby's Grubby on Team Grubby, because he's just Grubby like that, and I'm pretty curious to see how he's going to follow this up in this game, as he is one of those big fan favorites. He is one of the Warcraft 3 Bonjois. So let's go ahead and see how good his micro is, as Protoss super micro intensive, and this game is about to get started. With that being said, mirror builds coming out of both these players. Gateway slightly ahead for Grubby, so obviously since he has a 3-second lead on that gateway timing, it means that he's just gonna win. I'm kidding, guys. It doesn't actually make that big of a difference, and I mean, in the meanwhile, Ohana is actually kind of an interesting map, just because, you know, you can just barely actually blink in to the main from these low ground positions. So this is a good map for some of that Blink Stalker play. And you might be wondering why I keep talking about Blink Stalker play. Even in game number 1 I was talking about that, just because when you look at a map, that is actually one of the biggest focuses you have for determining, is this play strong on this map. And actually, kind of funny enough, we didn't actually see Blink Stalker play out of either of the players in that last game. We saw actually Grubby looking like he was going to go for Blink Stalker play, but in fact went for the Dark Shrine and completely caught Stardust off guard. So I'm sure that Stardust is going to be a little bit cautious about that play for the rest of the series now. So Grubby's kind of already done a little bit of damage in that sense. He's just going to have Stardust be maybe playing a little bit more cautious, because, I mean, what's worse than losing to Dark Templar 2 games in a best-of-5 series? That'd just be so incredibly frustrating. But, of course, we could actually just end up seeing some of that Blink Stalker play now from either of these players. Now, Stardust showed us in that game number 1 that he wanted to go for some of that Stargate play, which is kind of cool. It is a little bit, not maybe the most common build that you end up seeing in Protoss vs. Protoss. It definitely has its place. You definitely end up seeing it, but just not quite as often as, say, Robotics Facility play or Twilight Council play, etc. So in the meanwhile, we're just going to be waiting to see when these players are going to actually throw down the tech. Definitely not before these probes have actually been killed off, as Stardust is going to be looking to kill off that probe, even using that Chrono Boost on that gateway, as, you know, a lot of Protoss players like to do that, just to make sure that they can get that probe out of their base so they can start throwing down their tech. And looks like both these stalkers are going to pop out around relatively the same time, but this probe from Grubby is going to be able to sneak away, and that is a nice little win, just because, I mean, he can actually just go ahead and hide that somewhere. But look at this, Stardust actually already has 2 Zealots and a Stalker out, and wow, this is really interesting, as he is actually just, I mean, you don't generally see that unit composition. You might actually be able to do pretty well in the first little engagement of the Stalker Zealot versus Zealot Stalker engagement, but look at this. He's actually just taking a very roundabout path. Wouldn't be surprised to see him throw down just 1 more gateway at least. Maybe, I don't think he'll throw down 2 gateways, just because he's still mining off of this other gas geyser. But it looks like he wants to put on a little bit of light pressure, maybe even just kind of a quasi-feigned aggression. Oh my god, the Stalker from Grubby is just walking past all of these units. I'm not sure how well that's actually going to work out for him, as Grubby was actually looking to put on a little bit of aggression. But look at this. Stardust saw all of that. He's just going to run back with the Stalker over here to put on a little bit of aggression. And now the units from Stardust are actually in the main base of Grubby. Grubby's going to be throwing up this pylon then to try and back up and reinforce the fact that one of his pylons is going to go down. But now we end up seeing that Grubby's Stalker is going to be under fire. He's going to get surrounded by another Stalker, but then there's another surround coming in from Grubby's Stalker. It's just Stalkers trailing in slowly but surely, but it looks like Stardust does have, he doesn't exactly have a complete unit lead, but he did manage to take out one of those gateways from being powered. It looks like these Zealots are going to be trying to work their way on that Stalker, but the Grubby Stalker is actually able to snipe off both of those Zealots and the Stalkers, so it looks like Grubby, looking to be in a pretty decent position now, does have another pylon going back up, and he is not actually all that supply block. And in the meanwhile, look at this, he's got a proxy pylon of his own in his opponent's base. Stardust has to find some kind of way to react to this. Now the Stalker also trying to take out that probe, but it looks like he's going to have to retreat to the safety of this pylon. Unfortunately, that pylon does not actually have a whole lot of safety to garner for him, and in the meanwhile, this pylon is just going to basically end up falling very, very shortly. Now, Grubby is not done, though. He's going to try and make his way across the map, but he's going to actually try and warp in some units, and that's actually going to be a very scary thought for Grubby, as he's just going to lose these two stalkers almost for free. But Blink finishes up. Blink finishes up. That is absolutely huge. He manages to save both of those stalkers. Unfortunately, will end up losing that pylon. He needs to throw up another pylon if he wants to continue this aggression, but look at this. He gets the stalkers up and in the main. He's going to be able to blink some of them back and actually manage to blink them out without really taking a whole lot of damage. Does manage to take off the shields on one of those sentries, though, and oh my god, we have to see continuous force fields go down. But what is this? There was actually a pylon over here in the main base of Stardust. When did this probe get in there? There are 3 zealots making their way, or basically making work of that mineral line, and now Stardust has to be so careful. He's out of force fields, though. I think that a stalker can actually just blink in. They do see the blink in from all those stalkers. Going to immediately target down some of those opponent stalkers and even get rid of that sentry, just so he has the potential to actually stop the force fielding. But now an immortal pops out, but is there too much damage being done? We see these zealots starting to work on those probes yet again from that proxy pylon. The probe actually still sitting over there, and in the meanwhile, Grubby trying to see what damage he can do over at this front. It doesn't look like he can make it back in, as that immortal is actually going to go ahead and take out that proxy pylon. And finally, it looks like things have settled down just a little bit. Surprisingly, though, only 4 worker skill, considering Grubby actually had warped in quite a few zealots over there. Behind all this, Grubby is going to go ahead and try and expand off of this, but look at this. Stardust has a relatively scary army at this point. Even though Grubby does have that blink that he can use to jump over force fields, there are quite a good number of sentries over here, and once Grubby utilizes that blink, his stalkers are just going to be decimated by these 2 immortals. So if Stardust is able to push in and get a really good, oh, actually it looks like he wants to expand. This could actually be interesting. This actually also could be a fake out, though, if he just decides to, continue, plant this pylon down over here, and Grubby might, scout up over here, see that pylon with a stalker or something, and think, oh, my opponent's about to expand. And then instead, Stardust is actually just preparing for a big all-in. We actually end up seeing he's pushing very far out across the map, and Grubby, he's going to have to go ahead and retreat, but he could actually try and do a little bit of damage with these stalkers since they do have blink, but he has to be careful with those sentries. Oh no! Grubby losing one of those sentries does manage to, keep the rest of it. Oh no, he loses a second sentry and a stalker. He cannot afford to lose units against this incredibly scary unit composition from Stardust. Barreling its way across the map. Grubby does have 2 sentries that's still left over and can actually force field. He needs to have a really good force field. Does manage to get some pretty decent force fields. Some of those zealots are making their way into the natural expansion of Grubby. Grubby has that natural expansion of his own, but it's not going to be very useful right now. And the zealots just working their way on Grubby's units. It doesn't matter how good the blink micro is going to be. He's going to have to retreat back over into his main base. Does manage to get a couple of those zealots, but now we end up seeing the force fields are gone, and Grubby's going to have to retreat up into his main. There are 3 immortals going to be just decimating this stalker count. And what does Grubby have? He's going to be getting out an immortal of his own. Does have 3 gateways trying to warp in units, but he's going to be pulling probes. I have almost never seen a Protoss player who pulls probes in this matchup actually end up win the game, and we're going to see that immortal going to get focused far down. In the meanwhile, all of Grubby's stalkers are going to get killed off by these zealots and the remainder of the immortals. The immortal actually from Grubby surprisingly surviving, but I don't think it matters at this point, as Grubby's already lost 8 probes. He's already 8 probes down. He's losing gateways. He's going to be losing even more probes at this point, and even all of his stalkers are going to go down to these immortals. And I think this is going to be lights out for Grubby. Stardust is going to be showing a great game number 2, bringing this series back up to 1-1. There's the GG coming out from Grubby, and we see Stardust tying up this series, and this is going to be really cool to see. Stardust responding after that first game saying, you know what? No, Grubby, you cannot beat me that easily. You're going to have to fight for this one, and Grubby is definitely going to be up to the challenge. I know it, as Grubby is just so strong in Protoss for Protoss, and his micro is impeccable, but we'll have to see who's going to be able to come out on top. I cannot wait to find out. I'll see you guys over in game number 3.